we are back for a new video. I hope you're surviving in this little world that can be harsh on us sometimes. And talking about surviving, we are going to talk about how to survive university today. Because let's be honest, university is tough and we all need tips to survive. We need to help each other. So I'm here to give you my tips on how I survived 3 years in university. I did 2 years in France and 1 in the US, and the way to teach is really different from one place to another. Those tips can be very useful because some tips I got them in France and some tips I learned them in the US. It's kind of a mix of both, and I really hope it's gonna help you. What I think I learned the most in the US is how much learning in the US is more around the student. In France, for example, they will ask you to do an essay. They will just give you a question on a subject you barely talked about, where I feel like in the US, when they give you an essay, it has a subject, yes, but you can build it around something you like. Had an essay to write about writing processes, so you could just pick the writers you wanted, and your outline would be determined around what information you found on those authors. This way helps a lot to learn, way more than just giving us a question and expecting us to pull out the best essay you've ever heard. I think that's the biggest difference I saw between the US and France, and there is a lot of stuff that are related to this difference in the tips that I'm going to give you. So let's start. The first point would be to romanticize going to university. Sometimes you don't have the energy, you're not motivated. The best way to motivate yourself is to want to go. But how do you make yourself want to go? I did it by romanticizing it. So we saw it with Notion last time, but it can also be with your outfits. Dress however you feel comfortable. As long as it's romanticizing also university and it makes you want to go and study, it should work. You don't have to do all of this, but romanticizing it make it more easy to go there. It was a chore. I didn't want to go to classes. But when I came to the US, of course, I was romanticizing it because, you know, university in the US is like a huge thing. So I started to romanticize it more, and it really helped me. Because you can be in the shittiest university, but if you think it's really cool to go there, it's really cool to study, and you have pretty classes, you will want to go more. The second point is take notes on paper. It will help you memorize it better, because when you type on a computer, the thing is, you type faster. So yes, you win some time, and as you're taking notes, it's easier. But the problem is you're not memorizing it. The information goes in and goes out. When you write it, you take more time to write the letters and everything, so it will help you to get the information inside of your head. I know it's super dumb, but from my experience, you will remember, for example, if you missed a word or you were writing a word and you were just like, oh, how am I supposed to write it? And then there's just some scribbles and stuff. When you're going to reread your lesson, you will associate it with the class, and the class is the moment you learn the most. You have to make sure that you remember when you wrote in the class, what comments were said. It probably sounds super dumb, but for me it worked this way. So you can try and see if it works for you. Point number 3, which is kind of related to point number 2, is rewrite your lessons when you go home, still on paper. I have with me my classes as an example. These are my notes. I will write with a pencil so that in case I need to erase something, it takes a few seconds. Anyway, and when I go home, I try to do it as fast as possible so that I don't get delayed on it. But I rewrite my classes like this. So this is an entire different class. It looks pretty and you want to study it. When you do pretty notes like this, you take the time of making them pretty, you take the time of thinking how to organize your information. This will help you memorize even more. I will not be able to tell you if it works on an iPad or something. I cannot tell you because I never had one. Maybe, maybe not. I prefer to do it on paper because I don't see why I would buy an iPad to do exactly the same thing, but electronically. Point number 4, participating in class. It is very important to be active in class because that's the moment where you will learn most of the information. You will learn by seeing a teacher moving and expressing their classes and telling you their classes. I know some people do a terrible job, and it is way more difficult to learn because they are not making their classes really attractive, but still. For example, you will raise your hand and give a good answer, and you will be like, oh, I'm proud of myself. I gave a good answer. So like this, you will remember this moment. And same thing if you give a bad answer, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember this moment was kind of awkward because I didn't have the right answer. But now you remember your mistake because you tried. And now when you rewrite it, it is deep in your head because you were emotionally involved. Don't be scared to make mistakes. It's gonna be in the same point, but participate and Be active in class, but don't be scared to make mistakes, because Jesus, who freaking cares? In 5 years, all the students in your class, you probably will never see them again. Number 5, use presentations as a way to learn more. The best way to learn something is to explain it to someone. When you're doing a presentation, you are in a way teaching your classmates your subject. Basically, you need to make sure your informations are correct to give them to the rest of the class. So you have to spend time on it, and you have to explain, which means if someone does not understand, you have to make sure you understand to explain it to them. Point 6, try to find interest in everything you're studying. I think what we don't tell students enough is that learning is not just in school. You learn every time, every second you learn things. If you are curious and you get interested in things. You all learn to ride a bike. Not all of you, but I mean most of us learn to ride a bike. When you learn to ride a bike, it was teaching. But did you see it as going to school with your backpack and having to take notes? No, it's just a different kind of learning. For those who learn to draw, for those who learn to sing, for those who learn to play piano, for those who learn to skate, there are so many different ways to learn things, and learning is not just in school. My whole life I've heard learning is not all about grade. But what people don't tell you is that it's not saying you should not focus on your grades, but it is what matters is the knowledge you get. Try to always find something to take out of it. Right now, I am a community manager for a business, and when I was looking for places to work, it was very difficult because it is a field I've never studied in. So basically, you need to prove the business you're working for that you have skills, but I never worked in this field, so I had no skills. But because I was able to use Rita, which is a sort of like Photoshop, I can use CapCuts and stuff like this, helped me to get the job I have today. All this learning, I did it on my own time, and now that I realize that it is learning things, it's not because you're not in class that you're not learning. It made me like learning even more. Once you have this idea in your head that learning can be fun, learning can be for yourself, then learning becomes so much more interesting. All those people in class who were like, oh, you have bad grades, so you're stupid. All those first class students that were telling you that you should study more. Maybe it was easy for them because they were interested in this subject and you were not. And that's okay. The more you see that learning is also about yourself and what you want to learn, then it will be so much easier. Try to find interest in everything and try to be curious. It's also something that I started to understand while getting out of the dating game. I don't know if this is a saying, like to be like out of the dating game. I don't know. Since I'm out of this mindset and I'm so happy on my own, I can see that being curious is the best thing you could have. Knowledge is such a big value. If you want to find a job, you will need to have this kind of thing of, hello, this is me, this is my value. And your value is what you learned. And if you're capable of being, what's the word in English? Let me translate that. Being self-taught is very important too. Your value is more than in your grades, it's in your knowledge. Go for something that interests you, really, and when you talk about it, you look passionate, because this makes a huge difference. Just imagine at an interview, someone talking about editing films or editing videos, and they're just like passionate about it, and someone who's like, I studied it for this amount of years and I have this amount of experience. There is something, as long as what you learn is something that is valuable to you, you just win. You just win, really. Point number 7 is do not focus only on your classes. I've never been the perfect student, because I think one thing that defines everything that I did when I was studying in class or in university or whatever, I didn't take classes too seriously. I took the time that I needed for classes, but I didn't stress out for classes. And I know for some people it's difficult because you naturally do this, and I know it's really hard to fight. I don't know it from experience, but I know it from listening to people, so I know it can be tough for some people. And I'm with you. I'm with you. That's most that I can do. I will not be able to give any advice because I'm not in your situation. But I never felt guilty for doing something else than studying. Don't get too much into the state of mind at the level that you don't do anything. But I think you have to have this low level so that you're not stressed out. It is going to give you a mental health that is stable for you to study above, and your mind will be ready to study. And sometimes I had better grades than students who were spending all their time studying because my peace of mind was here, so I could learn above. I know it's a luxury and not everyone has this chance because a lot of people have anxiety and a lot of people have a lot of stress. I know it's more difficult for some people. I'm just giving my point of view, and if you're able to do what I do, which is allowing yourself not to feel guilty because you're not studying, then I would recommend you to try and do it. My next point will be try to have dreams and projects for yourself. That's not only for classes, but that's kind of for everything. I've been through a really tough times through middle school, and the only thing that kept me going was because I had a dream. And I knew what I wanted to do, and I was motivated to be like, my life tomorrow will be better. At the end of my year at Central Washington University, I knew I was going to go back home in France. And I have to be honest, I was not 100% happy about this because I was living the dream that I wanted to live. I was living on my own. I was in a big ass cool university. I had amazing friends. We were just like studying in the grass in summer and it was just the best thing ever. My life was perfect, but I didn't have anything to look up for. And I had a hard time studying on my classes, to be honest, at that time, because I didn't know where I was going to go. And I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And one day, I watched this video on a guy talking about how Atlanta was a great place for actors, screenwriters, and everything because it was like a big place for movies. And it just clicked in my head and I was like, that's it. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna work and I am going to put money aside and I am going to study near Atlanta. And I had a plan, and since then I could focus on my classes because I knew that I had to look up for something. And I didn't feel lost because I think the biggest thing that makes us feel lost is because we don't see what's coming. There's no more objectives. Like, why am I doing all this? There's no reason, there's no motives. I'm not saying it's easy. It is very difficult. To find what you want when you don't know what you want is very difficult. And I think the best way for you to find what will be your next move is to get curious. If you're curious and you look around and you let yourself have a lot of opportunities, even though a lot of opportunities are also scary, it will be easier for you to discover what you want. And this part of researching what you want and being curious is going to be hard too, because you don't really know where you're going. It's gonna be tough because you don't see the end of it, but I think at some point something will click. My last point, I think, is, I don't know if it's the most important one, but it is a very important one. Surround yourself with the right friends. You will become your friends. You will become your friends. The more you spend time with your friends, the more you will become them. So if you go and you are friends with people who don't want to study, who don't want to do things, or they're really down all the time, you might not do it. Some people might say, just cut them out of your life. I would not say that, because sometimes it's more difficult than this to cut someone out of your life. I'm not saying it's a bad advice. You can cut them out of your life if you want. If you want a big change, you can do it. But if you don't feel like it, just distance yourself. Like, the distance you put between yourself and other people have to be related to how much you want to look like them. Does it make sense? I don't know if it makes sense. It's kind of messy. I have an example for that. Last year when I was at Central, I was friend with a wonderful person and she was so clever. I am not kidding. She was super clever, and above being clever, she studied well, she had a schedule, she was organized, because she had no choice than to be organized, because she had a lot of work, and being around her made me want to study. It does not have to be the number one student, but someone who puts efforts in. And even though, I have very little focus, I know that I sometimes influenced her and it was turning into a fun studying time, but sometimes she was able to just like put me back in place, put me back in studying, and I could really study and I could really write. I had writer blocks. I came to her place because she was a good student and she was such a good human too. Like, don't forget that. Don't just go with great students just because you want good grades. Go also with great humans, because again, you are going to become your friends. And if you go with someone who studies well but who's the worst human ever, you will become a terrible human. Do you want to become a terrible human? We're not just here to have good grades. We're here to also be good humans. It doesn't have to be anyone in particular. It just has to be someone you want to look like, or you want them to leave a mark on you. I think we went over every point during this video. It's very important to be curious because that's how you learn. You don't all the time learn in classes. Sometimes you learn through life. Know that it's normal to struggle through university because it's a hard time. You are studying for your future. You see your parents having the same job forever and you stress out because you're like, maybe that's what I'm gonna do forever. Do I want to do this forever? First, you can change. It's not because you're 40 and you've been a teacher your entire life that you cannot change. You can. Do what you think is best for you because you're the best one to know. But I know how stressful it can be. I know, for example, that my dad will tend to pressure me to study and everything. But I think a part of him do not understand that I'm stressed more than him about this because it's also my future. It's also my life. He is scared that I don't find a job later. I am scared of finding a job that I will not like. Try to use your free time to study things that you like. It can be anything. It can literally be anything. You can learn to do 3D animation. Why not? You can learn to write. Why not? You can learn absolutely everything you want. Don't try to put barriers for yourself. Let yourself explore whatever you want to explore. I know it's tough, but I know you can make it, and you're gonna be a great person. Whatever the job you're doing, you're gonna be a great person. Don't close yourself because people tell you can do only one thing in life. You can do so many things in life. And I'm 21 and I'm probably saying shit, and maybe it's not true, but would you rather die thinking you followed this advice that you can just do one thing in your life and you've been on this thing and yes, you know it very deep, but it's just the only thing you know? Or do you want to follow the advice of this silly little girl on the internet who just decided that there would be more to life? I mean, why not? You can definitely believe that there's just more than what people tell you there is about life. That's okay to be hopeful. We are dreamers out here and we should keep being dreamers because we're gonna change the world. Dreamers, change the freaking ass world. Anyway, I really have to stop talking because I could talk about this all day. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. I still don't know what it's gonna be about, but let's meet next week, I guess.